Welcome, Pasha.
Is that an Armenian flag I see on your thing?
Yeah, bro.
Why do you have
There,
that?
there are Armenians in Rojava within the military.
So what about what they do to the Kurds of Armenia and they do to the Kurds of Azerbaijan? What about that?
Bro, like every minority in Rojava has its own military wing. They have their own political parties.
One second. Adam, I'm not asking you about Rojava now,
Yeah.
okay? I'm asking you why it doesn't even matter if they're in Rojava.
Okay. I'll tell you
Why
why.
would
I'll
you?
tell you why I put
You
it
don't
there.
even know what I'm
Because they're
gonna
allied to
say.
us.
You're not even know what
Because
I'm
they're
gonna.
our allies.
They're allies?
Yeah.
So what about the Kurds they've unalived and the reason why Red Kurdistan doesn't exist anymore?
Bro, the flag that's on there right now represents a military council that belongs, not a military council, but like a military wing that belongs to them, to the Armenians in northern Syria.
So
Yeah, I
you
see what you're
support
saying, bro. If I may, basically, what you're saying is like Armenia, the country, is responsible for victimizing like Armenians in the Armenian, or sorry, Kurds in Armenia, right, brother Pasha?
It's crazy.
Oh
this is
damn,
my
he has a
flag.
whole Azerbaijan flag.
Yeah, I
Hey, are you
support
Kurd?
Azerbaijan
Are you
fully.
Kurdish?
Absolutely, I'm
Really?
Kurdish. You know how many? If you're educated, my friend, look at the Kurds that are in Azerbaijan.
Okay, but you're saying they're in Armenia too, and they've been victimized
Yeah,
in Armenia.
absolutely. And the
Okay,
ones that are over there.
but
So
this
one
is.
second, one second,
Sorry, go
one
ahead. Sorry.
second, one second. Like, come on, man.
No, right.
So the Kurds of Armenia, okay, the Yazidi ones, they're forced to say that they're Yazidis. They're forced to say that they're not Kurds. They deal with a lot of persecution there. And if they say they are Kurdish, there's two government agents that go to their house, put them in jail, or they even unalive their family members. This is a fact. You can look it up if you don't believe me. This right here is what I support. This. Not the piece of
And
garbage Armenia. This is the flag that I support the most.
I'm not disputing your accusations.
Besides my Kurdish flag.
I'm just saying that like his flag, is it jihad?
Yeah.
Jihad, like the flags that he's showing are the ones that are just purely the Armenian people in Syria. They're not affiliated with the Armenian government in any way, and they're just the
Exactly.
minorities within Syria that are Armenian, and they've created a local council that's under the wing of the SDF.
Look how far that got us.
Does that make sense? So they're not affiliated with Armenia in general. Like, is your problem with the Armenian army and the Armenian government, or just with Armenian people? Because that's a different story.
More of the government, to be honest with you.
Then yeah, you should have no problem with Armenians in Syria who have been there for years, like a long time, who just became their own group.
Are you Kurdish by any chance?
My grandma was Kurdish, but no, I don't speak Kurdish.
So you're from Rojava?
No, I'm from Damascus.
He's from Syria. Yeah, Hayan, do you mind if I add like multiple people, or would you like to have a conversation with
It's
us?
up to you. I don't mind. I go with the flow. I don't care.
Yeah, so I made this
You can talk to everyone.
picture where I added like multiple organizations that are allied to the KCK, the Kurdistan Communities Union. And some of them are Arab, some of them, as we were just talking about, the Armenian, there are Turkmen groups, and even Turkish groups.
Whoa. What'd you just say?
Yeah, there are
No,
Turkmen.
say that again, word for word. There's Turkmens in Rojava.
Yeah,
That's
allied
like
to the
Turkey.
SDF.
Probably
not
very few,
literally
but like
fighting
that doesn't
Turkey.
surprise me. Like Syria is a very diverse country. Wherever you go, you'll find all kinds of people.
Yeah,
I could vaguely remember a video that I saw that a bunch of Syrian Turkmen said that we're going to take over Damascus and make it part of Turkmenistan.
Yeah, there are some crazy Turkmens like in SNA who fight like basically as Turkish proxies in Syria, and they're very pro-Turkey.
I think that's insane,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's too many of them. They're not even supposed to be there. Like I said again, I came up here for a few minutes. I'm going to go down. Adam, I'm going to block your ass. This is the last one I'm going to
Why?
talk to you, bro.
Why?
No, wallah, brother. I'm done with you, man. It was a good while it lasted, but it's
What the
just you do too many weird shit, man.
All right. You have fun with your Azeri flag,
Azerbaijan flag, and I will.
Azerbaijan flag. I wish you success, bro.
You as well, brother.
Nice meeting you,
very-
Pasha.
Yeah, very funny guy.
Interesting. Yeah, like I don't know. That seemed like his problem was a bit more with Armenians than just the country and the government.
I agree. Like, I didn't even know he had that flag. I mean, I don't. It actually shocked me. I didn't expect that from him.
Yeah, me like the SNA participated in the Azerbaijan Nagorno-Karabakh war, and that was pretty disappointing, to be honest. But like, they were just, you know, poor people that wanted to get paid, and unfortunately, they got dragged into Libya. They got dragged into Nagorno-Karabakh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but and also actually, like, I recently saw a military parade with the Armenian flag and the Syrian National Army, or like they were carrying the green Syrian flag, you know, which
Yeah.
was crazy to see. But I think
I
it was
mean,
in Aleppo or something where there's Armenians, and now they're under the Syrian government now.
yeah, in northeast Syria, they've been waving the Free Syrian flag, the green flag, for a very long time. You know, they weren't
Yeah, but
waving the.
it's been very taboo, and especially like after Ahmed al-Farah, like they're still cracking down on people with like his picture in their phone, and like if
Yeah.
they're raising the flag and there's like an actual demonstration or something, they try to break it up. They don't want like too much pride or patriotism. Like a lot of people in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, they feel very left behind by the liberation of Syria because they feel like SDF is still in power, you know.
I mean, like, I don't understand where that comes from, because the SDF liberated half of Syria. You know, Arabs, Kurds, like different ethnicities united, liberated half of Syria from IS rule.
Yeah,
And
but
also like Assad's
people were
rule.
more against Assad than IS. Like IS was always viewed as a symptom, whereas Assad was viewed as the actual sickness. And so people like
Yeah.
that talk about like liberating from IS, like that was always inevitable. The people were always going to fight back against IS, and also like the U.S. coalition was always going to fight back against IS. They don't let an Islamic state stay in power very long, and so the real problem was always Assad. And the idea that SDF was willing to to put aside fighting Assad in order to fight ISIS is what most people are really mad at.
Right. Yeah, you were talking about this last time as well. Like the SDF was only there to stop and like fight IS, right? They were not there to remove Assad from his place.
Exactly. And YPG at first, like when 2011 started, they wanted to seem like they were the revolution, like they were with the revolution and that they supported Kurds in the revolution and everything, and that they were anti-Assad. But then, like very slowly, it started to appear that PKK was, I guess, maybe leading them towards acting on behalf of Assad so that they could engage in their own agenda of like trying to, you know, help people in Kandil, people in KRI, people in Turkey. Like they weren't focused on Syrians. They didn't care if you know, Assad stayed in power and Russia was still bombing the rest of Syria. They cared about their little slice in northeast,
Right.
and getting to stay in power over it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Rojava, as if, you know, if we talk about Rojava, we can first go into like definitions, right? Because northeastern Syria, it's like a huge part. Not all of it we Kurds consider to be Rojava. For example, Raqqa
Yeah.
is an Arab city. It's not Western Kurdistan. It cannot be. But when we talk about cities like Afrin, Kobani, Kamishlo, Hasaka, right? These are the ones we consider Rojava.
I agree.
So a part of Rojava, I think, if I remember correctly, the Assad forces left these Kurdish cities around 2004, like a very long time ago, way before IS. And they left those Kurdish cities, and
2004?
since that moment they were in control of the PYD.
You mean 2014?
I think it was even before that. Like a very
So
long
2011 was when the revolution started. Before 2011, the Syrian government was all over all these cities. It was just the Syrian government. There was no other party. Like even the PYD was still outlawed, kind of. Like they existed in a sort of gray area where they were active, but they were sort of underground. And then in 2011, like once the revolution became militarized and people actually took up arms against Assad, he was busy with Homs and Aleppo and Hama and Damascus and Dar'a, and so he left Qamishli and Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor to the YPG to kind of take over. And there's an article about like a meeting that PKK had in Damascus in 2011, where a senior like Assad official said like, we helped you in 1990s, you know, we harbored you against Turkey, and now you got to help us back, like you got to pay us back by supporting, like basically like putting down the revolution in Kurdish areas. And there's also the fact that like when like before ISIS was really like widespread all over Syria, they had already taken power of Afrin, they had already taken Kobani, but then the areas in between that were Arab or Assyrian, they kept those, like those were still rebel held, okay, and that was still fine, you know, that was still okay. But then, and they didn't fight rebels at that time. But then once ISIS became like a major threat, then they started taking over the areas that weren't just Kurdish. And this was called connecting the cantons, because Afrin, Kobani, and Khamishli, like they're very separate, right? There's a lot of land in between them. And YPG controlled them, but but after fighting ISIS and defeating them, like they ended up connecting these areas. And that's why they have a lot of Arab land now. And they still won't like let go of it. But I agree that they should still maintain like those few majority Kurdish areas, or at least they should compete in parties for them where, you know, they're elected for it.
Yeah, when we talk about, you know, northeastern Syria, like a lot of people view it as a Kurdish occupation, let's say, right? As if Kurds control the place, which might be true, you know, if you look at the leadership.
Yeah.
But you know how we should view it, how it should be, is that the Rojava revolution started with Kurds in Rojava, but eventually it extended and it started including Arabs, and it started including Armenians, Turkmen, and many different ethnicities, and it became the SDF.
Yeah, I can understand that, but the thing is like, it didn't. I mean, you can say the same thing about Shara. It didn't happen democratically. They are the de facto leaders, so people had to accept them whether they like it or not. And maybe they were better than the alternative, but there's always going to be the resistance that we didn't choose you, you know. And obviously, there's a lot of people like on both sides trying to diminish their standing and make them look really bad. And also on both sides, like, bro, your story right now was Muslim in Chad meme or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like both our sides are like pretty I don't know how to say, like jingoistic about supporting our side, you know, and it really doesn't have to play into that kind of stuff. Like both are people who are worthy of criticism, and both maybe should run for elections and go head to head, you know.
I agree. You know, me as a Kurd, you know, because I'm from northern Kurdistan, so it's occupied by Turkey. I look at these conflicts as like as if it's mine, right? You might, you know, you're looking into it because you're from Damascus, you're from Syria, but these borders that were drawn on Kurdistan, for example, the Turkish-Syrian border does not divide Turks and Arabs. It divides Kurds and Kurds. When the border was drawn, if they had just drawn it half a centimeter higher on their maps, I would have been half Syrian now, right?
Yeah, but the whole land is still technically like fake. Like we understand that Syria is fake. We understand Lebanon is fake. We understand Palestine and Jordan aren't real. Like we know that it's the Levant, it's Mesopotamia, it's Anatolia. We know that already. But the way that it's worked out in history has been that every country is on its own right now. Like we can't just we can't just ask like to erase the border and to just unite or to like keep drawing different borders, because it's okay. First of all, like the country is already developed like infrastructure to have a border, and the police and the government is already set up in a way that no one wants to just lose their job or wants to like change everything all of a sudden. And so we have to work within the system that we have. And to me, that means that Kurds in Syria have to work within the Syrian state system, and Kurds in Turkey have to work within the Turkish system to get their freedoms, and to maybe one day develop like a zone that is borderless, that they can freely travel to and back from, because I know that those borders separated families, and generations of Kurds have been unable to like visit their homelands because of these borders, and I understand that, and I think it's like terrible, but like fighting militarily, or provoking a Turkish state response by engaging in suicide attacks or something like that, like is not a constructive way, in my opinion. Like, I like that they have a political arm in what is it, DEV, or what's the party in Turkey that's
Dem Party,
that has Öcalan's Dev Party. So yeah, like you can. I know it's very hard to work in that system, and sometimes like violence or resistance or violent resistance is inevitable, because you make every political option impossible. But the political possibilities in Syria right now have opened up in a way unlike before, where we hopefully don't need violence to solve matters, where we have like constructive dialogue happening with the government and all the different militias that made up the rebels, and all the different militias that made up the SDF, and like we don't, and the US and Turkey and Qatar and all these countries are mediating. And don't think, by the way, that people don't like the SDF in the Gulf, like in Khalij, like Saudi Arabia and UAE. They actually do advocate for the SDF, by the way.
Well, I don't know about that part, but I wanted to go back to about what you were talking when you were talking about the how Kurds should act, according to the borders, and the Kurds in Syria should just move in like the politics within Syria. That's exactly what we are doing, right? So we have the Kurds have been fully divided. In Syria, we have different political parties. In Turkey, we have different political parties and movements. The Kurds in Iraq, in southern Kurdistan, have created an autonomous region, and it's like all Kurds. These borders have divided Kurds, and it's not. The borders are not based on like. These are not ethnic borders, because they divide Kurds on all sides. These are not, religious borders, because it, divides Muslims and, all of that. To an extent, I think not only the borders are the problem, but the systems itself that created these countries. Like Turkey is a nation state for Turks. Syria is a nation state for Arabs. Iraq is a nation state for Arabs. Iran is a nation state for Persians, although it doesn't claim to be. It is, right?
But just like Rojava would be considered a nation state for Kurds, because it's like the Kurdish name for that spot. It's like if Kurdistan was a country, it would have that same problem where people would like the minorities would think it's not a country for us, it's made for Kurds, and obviously the Kurds would be the majority, and they would own most of the power and most of the land and most of the jobs, and people would still have that. And that's why we reject it.
We reject the Kurdish state. We don't like the YPG movements don't want a Kurdish nation state.
But they still occupy lands that are not just Kurdish majority.
It's not considered occupation, since it's, for example, Rojava. We talk about Rojava, but when we use that term, we're talking about the western part of Kurdistan, right? It's not it's not the name of the government. The name, the government within Rojava doesn't call itself Rojava or Kurdistan, right?
Right. But like I said, like it's still that there's going to be resentment that the majority of the leaders are Kurdish, and that the agenda is set by, what people accuse of being a PKK affiliated party. And, there's not much diversity in the parties right now. Like, it's mostly the YPG that maintains the power.
Yeah, it started with the Kurds, because the Kurds were not represented within the politics in Turkey and within Syria, right? Kurds didn't even have passports. I wanted to also talk about, you mentioned political parties in Turkey like Dem Party. These things were only possible due to the armed struggle that Öcalan had started in the 80s.
Exactly, and that's what I mentioned that. I said that armed resistance is necessary when political options are impossible.
Right.
But now political options are possible, so armed resistance is not necessary, and that's why Öcalan said to disarm. But I was gonna say, like you said that we have different parties in each country. Like, isn't the YPG basically founded by PKK members, and isn't the PDK also have a party in Syria that's called the PDKS, which was also founded by like the people that subscribe to the PDK philosophy and Barzani and all that. Like both of our major parties are PKK founders or Barzani followers. Those are our two parties, and PKK founders are the ones that won, because the Barzani followers, like, or whatever, like the PDK, their offices were closed down under SDF, and they were burned, and they were exiled to Iraqi Kurdistan. So if you're saying like we want Kurds to be represented in politics, it shouldn't just be the one party that monopolizes all of that.
Yeah, I agree. But these things only happen because Kurds were not represented in those systems, right? And the only reason why we have those political parties, you know, is because of the armed struggle. Just like as you said, if you know the Arabs in Syria united with the Kurds and fought for the freedom of the Kurds, you know, of our language to be recognized, then the Kurds would have sided with those Arabs. If the Turks did that, we would have sided with them, and we actually did.
There was Kurds that wanted to, like Mish'al Tammo, but he was assassinated by YPG, like the PDKS, the Syria Future Party, it was called. They were willing to stay with the Syrian revolution. They were willing to fight Assad, but they were willing to work with Turkey. And the PKK was like, nope, not on our watch.
Yeah, even today, there are like groups like Jabhat al-Akrad in Syria, and it's a free Syrian army that's Kurdish. But they're also within the SDF. So they're allied to the Kurds, and it's a free Syrian army.
Okay, but they're not allowed to hold major authority or major power, because they're seen as suspicious, because the founders of the SDF are very anti-Turkey, and they don't want anyone that's too affiliated with a movement that's outside of their own KCK umbrella, bro.
Right. But that makes sense, right?
I don't think so, because being very anti-Turkey is basically like shifting every Kurd's agenda towards yours, because not all Kurds are in Turkey. Some of them are Iranian, some of them are Iraqi, some of them are Syrian.
Yeah. But then you're dividing the Kurds within these borders that were just drawn upon us. Like
but they have material conditions that are different, though, whether you like it or not. Like a Syrian Kurd living in Syria has more in common than his fellow Syrians than an Iraqi Kurd living in Iraq, or a Turkish Kurd living in Turkey.
Well, that's basically not true. Well, look, bro.
Yes, it absolutely
the border
is, bro.
between
Their citizenship
Syria
is different. The schools they go to are different.
Yeah, exactly.
Materially
the
different in their life.
Yeah.
You have more in common with someone in Istanbul than with someone in Qamishli, bro.
No.
Absolutely.
I would.
Where are you right now?
Look, I'll tell you this. It's only that's the case because of these borders that were drawn. The Syrian Turkish
whether you like
border,
it or not, it is the reality.
Okay, the border between Syria and Turkey was drawn on the Treaty of Lausanne, right?
Okay, how many years ago? 100 years ago.
Yes.
Since then, things have developed in a way that make that a reality on the ground.
Yeah, it was drawn by the French and the Turks. So the people that were divided by this border did not even have a word in this. What?
I understand. We didn't have a word in it either.
Right. But it does not divide Syria, like Arab Syrians.
What do you mean? It divides us with Iraqis, and it divides us with Jordanians and Palestinians and Lebanese.
The Treaty of Lausanne did not draw the border between Syria and Iraq.
Sykes-Picot, it's the same argument, with the colonial borders. We get that.
It is, yes, I agree. But wait, 1 second, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So, what I'm saying is, right, we have to look for solutions. You know, we should not look. We should look into the past and learn of what's wrong and what's right. And I think creating these nation states and unifying everyone, you know, unity is a good thing. But once unity means the oppression of one nation, then I don't think it's a good thing. unity should mean accepting people for how they are,
Okay.
besides their religion, besides their ethnicity, and that's how we should move.
طيب. Here, can I give you an example? Like, look, you say that Arabs aren't divided. Look, I don't necessarily like I love every Arab from Saudi Arabia to Morocco. I love all of them, but I consider myself more Levantine. I consider myself more part of the Levant nation with Palestinians, with Jordanians, and with Lebanese. I think I have the most in common with them, and I'm separated by borders with them.
Yeah.
And that's a lot like Kurds in Turkestan and in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. We wish to be united the same way that you do, but the way that I have found to fight for that is for us to develop our own nations so that our governments can eventually collaborate on something like a Eurozone, so we're connected, rather than try to just erase how are you going to erase the border and just restructure a whole nation? They used to do that in colonial days because they were colonizers. The solution is to make coalitions on the ground where people are able to actually, have jobs across the border, make trade with each other, travel freely, speak freely. Like the signs will have all the languages of every one of those, minorities as well. This is how you actually deconstruct the colonial borders, is by working in the areas themselves, not by just grandstanding and saying oh, we must unite as a country and these borders are fake. Sure, they're fake. I agree with you. All borders are imaginary, but tell that to someone who's trying to cross the border and there's a policeman saying, no, if you do that, I'll gun you down. They are a material reality at the same time. No.
Yeah, I agree. So the police and the military forces, as you said, they will, get you down if you cross a border. It's with something like that's so basic, right? So the militaries and police within these countries that are created are being used against the people. They're being used to oppress the people and to defend the authority of the government, the so-called authority, that they have. What we should have instead is a democracy that's from the bottom up. We shouldn't divide ourselves within ethnicities or religions. There might be different ethnicities and religions, but they can coexist with each other. A state should not identify itself with with an ethnicity or with one language and one flag, and
But isn't that what Syria is? I know it's the Arab Republic, but it's not like we're trying to found a country on Arabic values. We're not trying to call it Arabistan or something like that. We just speak Arabic. It's just the language is the majority.
Right. Well, Syria used to be a Ba'athist country, an extreme Arab nationalist country. Currently, there's Jolani, and the country is still called a Arab Republic.
Yeah, I think it would be very unpopular to remove it, but we're working on building an opposition that would be willing to say it, because Shara is I'm not gonna say he's smart, but I'm saying he's pragmatic. He listens and he thinks that this is a good move and this is a bad move, and sometimes he's willing to take risks. There's a lot of Islamists who think he's gone way too woke and is way too liberal, right? You know what I mean? As much as most people criticize him in the media for being conservative and Islamist, a lot of
there
his
are
base
a lot of
and
these memes with LGBT flags behind them.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, a lot of these Islamists, they think he's gone too woke and that he's very liberal and he's appeasing the West and stuff. So he's trying to do a balanced thing, and one of them maybe he just thinks removing the word Arab is just not a good move right now for his popularity or whatever. He's just well, we can delay that, or we can worry about that later. But it's coming to a head because the integration with SDF, I think that's one of their demands, and hopefully he says yes. I hope that is removed, because we're not an Arab country. I don't consider myself fully Arab. I have Turkish ancestry and I have Kurdish ancestry.
Right. Do you mind if I invite some other people up?
Of course, yeah, go for it.
So, welcome Yusuf. I'll also invite Syrian Geomaps.
Hello.
Welcome, bro. How are you doing?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Syrian Geomaps, welcome, bro.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. Could you introduce yourself? I've never met you before.
Okay, no problem. Well, I am from Saudi, but I have Syrian origins.
Okay, all right. So, Syrian Geomap, what do you think of the conversation?
It's very good and it's very educational.
Like, do you have anything to add, or were you just listening?
I was listening the entire time.
All right, bro, that's fine. Yusuf, do you mind like introducing yourself to the others, and maybe you could, add something to the conversation?
Of course. Well, my name is Yusuf. I'm Kurd, but I'm from, like Jihad, I'm from the occupied part in Turkey. I don't really have much to add, at least not to anything you guys have just said. I'll maybe add something later as you guys continue to talk. We'll see. Can you guys, like, is my microphone good? Because I know
Yeah,
in
I
the
can hear you. I can hear you. Do you have any questions, maybe?
I mean, I'd rather just you guys talk a bit more and then we can maybe comment on what's being said, because otherwise I'll have to we'll have to go back to a lot of
No
stuff you guys were
problem.
talking about before.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have anything to comment on my document?
Yeah,
Uh,
actually,
yeah, go on.
did you want to say, Yusuf?
I mean, like, what do you mean specifically?
Yeah, I
Like,
sent you had like a document on DMs, and it was like
Yeah, you sent
all my research on Rojava.
I heard a bit about, for example, what you were saying about how the PKK administration does not allow like other organizations from other like other ideologies to have ground in Rojava, and about how the party, or is like the Rojava administration, is very anti-Turkey. And I also said in the chat before that the administration is very complex and has multiple factions within it that strive to become the leaders. And I don't think it's fair to say that the administration is like anti-Turkey, especially right now as they are working with Turkey and Europe and kind of the Syrian government to integrate and all that.
Okay.
That's all really. I mean,
I think I'll respond, but you had like just keep in mind what you were gonna say about the document. But yeah, like I think they were anti-Turkey, like especially during the decision in the revolution of whether to fight ISIS or whether to stay with fighting Assad as well. Like it showed that they were more concerned with getting U.S. support, because the U.S. put the condition that they must fight ISIS and not Assad to get U.S. Support, and the rebels got the same option, and they decided, no, we don't, like, it's not that important to us to have U.S. support. We'd rather keep fighting Assad, and the YPG at the time like said, okay, we'll just fight ISIS, and to many, like, this showed that they weren't devoted to fighting Assad, or the ones that were making the decision were more devoted to like gaining power and having U.S. backing, so that they could maybe become strong enough to help their people in Turkey rather than help the people in Syria that were already being devastated by Assad. So this is where that criticism comes from. Like, I know maybe in times that they've been willing to negotiate with Turkey, but also they criticized the Iraqi government for cooperating with Turkey at the same time.
you should keep in mind that when the Jolani rebels, I should say, when they were couping the Assad government, in December, the administration, the Rojava administration, also did not really fight against Assad or even fight against the rebels. They just stayed out of it. I think that we have to keep that in mind when we look back to the beginning of the revolution. I think the policy is not like U.S. focus. It's more so completely neutral. And
yeah, they call it the third way.
Keeping that in mind, when you look at the years after the beginning of the revolution, you see that the Rojava administration has also worked together with, for example, Russia, and also a bit with Iran, but more so Russia. I don't think they're necessarily like focused on U.S. support, more so maybe like supporting
Yeah,
generals
they want power. They're trying to get power. Like they'll take whoever is willing to side with them. Which for Syrians, if you're a Syrian who's anti-Assad, who's anti-Russia and anti-Iran, makes you look like a traitor. You know, like I'm sorry, but that's how Syrians view it. You know, I understand that for their agenda, it may be that they just want to gain legitimacy and authority so that they can have the backing to make decisions to protect Kurds but to Syrians who think that Kurds have also been persecuted by Assad, this was seen as treacherous.
I get you, but I don't think it's really any different for the current government, for example, for the rebels. I mean, they also had US support and also support from Turkey. And also Öcalan right now is like making deals with Russia and also I think with Iran, but I'm not sure actually. But at least at very least Russia.
But look, bro, I would have had the same criticisms of him in December 7th, but who was the one who went to Damascus and actually did it? That's like at the end of the day, even I have to say, yeah, he actually did it. Because I've had criticism. I used to say he liked just staying in the northwest. He liked just Idlib. He was happy just being a little emir in Idlib. I used to say that. But no, he ended up marching to Damascus and freeing Syria. You can't say that he did this, like he collaborated with this and that. He did what had to be done and got it done because SDF did what had to be done to keep Northeast in their control. They never wanted to touch Damascus.
But isn't that really the same thing? Because in both cases,
No, it's not, because one liberated Syria from Assad and one didn't.
But one liberated Syria, we could say, because the US wanted that, and the other also kept the northeast because the US wanted that. It's the same thing, really. I mean, if we both know that the Assad government got sold out by Iran and Russia, and that some kind of deal was made.
Okay.
In that, we also know that the US armed the rebels. I don't think it's fair to say like, oh.
But we also know that, first of all, they didn't they armed the rebels, but they didn't give them airstrikes or air support like they did to the SDF.
But they did give them information about how to attack the Assad government, like where they were weak and all that, because otherwise...
No, they didn't. The US was not involved in helping them topple Assad whatsoever.
I don't think that's really true, but I don't think it's worth arguing about.
Yeah, it's not worth arguing about, but you know what is worth arguing about? The fact that like the rebels stayed on the course of the revolution. They stayed on whether or not, like whether it was fighting Assad, whether it was fighting Iran, whether it was fighting ISIS. They fought all of these people. Whereas SDF collaborated with Russia, collaborated with Iran, collaborated with Assad. They don't have that kind of distrust as Syrians have of SDF.
I don't see how there's like a valid criticism when
because you're Turkish, because you don't see it as a big deal.
No,
you're not Syrian, bro.
No, listen, I just don't think it's a valid criticism when today both of these powers are working together, like both the rebels and at least like the government now, I guess. And Rojava are working together with Russia and all that.
But you're just being defensive over SDF. These are decisions that they're making after Assad is already gone.
Listen. I also criticize them for working with the US, especially also Russia and Iran, but especially the US.
Okay, well, I criticize Shadar for also working with Russia. I don't think he should be doing that. My actual, my honest opinion, I think he's getting advice from Turkey to keep Russia in their back pocket in case USA tries to like snake in some way to keep it as leverage, because Turkey does the same thing. They're part of NATO, but USA won't sell them fighter jets, so they also keep like Russia in their back pocket. They paid Russia to create like a huge nuclear reactor in their country.
No, you're right, but
and they're in the middle of just like both powers.
My point was simply that if the people of Syria want to look at Rojava and think of them as like hypocrites, that's fair, but I think the Syrian government, the current one, does the same thing. So in my opinion, that was not like, it doesn't really make sense to me for them.
I think that's a very superficial comparison because you're just trying to find something, oh, look, they worked with Assad and they worked with Russia. But at the end of the day, who was the one that actually focused on freeing Damascus?
Yeah, Yusuf, I can give you another example, right? For example, we are both from Bakur. When the Barzanis go and do trade with Erdogan and Turkey, we call them traitors because they're Kurds as well. Like, why do they go out of their way? Whilst we were getting, bombed in Nusaybin and Jizra, the Barzanis were having trade with them. So I think Hayyan views it in the same way. Even though the Kurds in the north fought and liberated a plot of land in Syria, they later on they still, worked with Assad, and didn't, fight to liberate all of Syria like Damascus. which causes the Syrians to see the Kurds as traitors or the SDF as traitors.
But my point
Right.
is that I don't really think it's fair to say that the difference here is the intention, because I also don't think it was really the intention of the rebels to attack Assad when they did. I think they were instructed to do so by the US because a deal was made. In the same way that the Rojava administration took the Arab cities in the northeast because they were told to do so. You know, like I don't see really. I'm not trying to like defend Rojava because I don't really think it's worth defending, but I just don't see the difference between these two situations.
I appreciate, Jihad, what you said. Like, yeah, thank you. Like, it's a very personal thing, you know. If you're not from the place, you're not gonna feel the same way about it, and that's totally fair. I get that, because like I get it. Like Sadar is pretty close with Erdogan, and you might see that as very treacherous yourself too, and I think so too. Like, I wish they didn't have such a close relationship, and I want Erdogan gone. Like, I think he's overstayed his power for a long time. But in terms of like the way that Syrians view SDF, like there's a lot of ways that they could have not rubbed it in our faces and stuff. But there was like this incident in Afrin that no one forgets, like where they battled rebels, and then after they took all their corpses onto a truck, and then they paraded them around the city to celebrate it. And obviously, like in newspapers on their side, they said they were all Daesh fighters. But everyone knew from Aleppo that this was all rebels, you know, and they spread this around, and nobody forgets this, you know.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I cannot comment on that stuff because, like, I don't know anything about it, right? So I'll just take your word for it. But
it was in. Yeah, I can send if you. I'll follow you. You follow me back. I'll send you the document I sent to Jihad.
Yeah. Okay. I'll follow you.
Yeah, Hayan, we can. You were asking me about the document, right? So I can give you some answers on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Also, before that, we were like texting, and you mentioned that Öcalan wanted a independent Kurdish state, right? But this is a lot of people think that Öcalan changed his mindset about the Kurdish issue, but this is not fully true. Öcalan himself always, if you look into his old interviews, he always said that he wanted to solve the Kurdish issue in a democratic way with the Turkish government, but the Turkish government was not open to democracy. Therefore, the PKK was forced to take up arms against the Turkish state. If they were open to it, the PKK would have solved the Kurdish issue through a democratic platform in the Turkish state. And he said another very important thing in one of his interviews. He mentioned that Kurds and Turks are like the nails on your hands and the flesh of your finger. So if you want to separate those two, it will hurt a lot. So this is like a clear statement that the PKK did not want to, really separate Kurds and Turks, but they would have to if it's necessary. If the Turkish state is not open to democracy and, those ideas, then they would have to. This is why they were forced to take up arms.
I thought it was more like PKK was founded when the Soviet Union was still in power. And they kind of like Öcalan knew that Turkey was on USA's side, and so he would have to take a position that's pro-Soviet Union to get their support in order to be able to compete with Turkey. And so he just appealed to their politics by saying he admires Stalin or stuff like that,
Yeah, the Soviet Union did not want Turkey to divide anyway. They wanted there to be a communist revolution in all of Turkey. So they did not want to create another separate state within the Middle East for the Kurds. Therefore, if you look into the organizations in Turkey, like a lot of the communist organizations are pro-Kurds. And a lot of the communist groups consists of many Kurds, even though if the group itself is Turkish. So yeah, that's a very interesting thing. But those are like Cold War era. That's like a very long time ago.
Yeah. But that's when the PKK was founded in the Cold War, right? Like, so it's still kind of a Cold War relic. But yeah, they've shed their past to reflect like a more neoliberal tone, I think.
Yeah, the PKK's war was, I think it was the only Cold War that was still going on after the Cold War ended. So it's the only war that was still, happening. So a lot of Kurds are happy that the war ended. Kurds have been begging for peace for years because on the internet you see many Turks, bragging about wars, and they say like Kurdistan, where's Kurdistan, in a, jokingly manner. and they try to praise their ethnicity and, you know, act like as if they are superior because they are Turks. But if you look into the Kurds, all the Kurds are just demanding is literally peace and their right to speak their language, to practice their culture. Like, it's, you know, very two different perspectives. You have the fascists on the one side, and you have the Kurds only wanting their rights on the other side.
Yeah, but some of them take pretty extreme measures to try to agitate, like, for that cause. You know, they're not just, you know, just trying to do it by working in the politics anymore. Like, I mean, like, hopefully now it will keep transitioning to a more nonviolent method of resistance, but they have been pretty extreme in their methods too, bro.
Yeah, well, you kind of have to, you know. It's war. Like, war is not good. War is never good.
To some degree. To some
War is
degree,
never good.
So about the document.
Yeah, so I started reading it. On the top, you go into like basic terminology, like what is Rojava, means Western Kurdistan. It's true, you know. Yeah, I wanted to show you like a very old map first. So I took this screenshot right before starting the live to show you. This is an Ottoman map, and it shows the region of Kurdistan. It has Kurdistan on it. So when we talk about Kurdistan, it's a geography. It's the land where Kurds live. So yes, northern Syria is part of Kurdistan because Kurds live in northern Syria. It's very basic. So it's not a term that only the nationalists use. It's a historic term to refer to the land of the Kurds, meaning Kurdistan.
I think what you're missing is the 100 years since, where 3 generations of families have been raised to just call it Syria, bro. Because most people do just call it Syria. And I'm saying that most people that call it anything else usually have an agenda, which is like PKK or something. Like, if they call it Rojava, you can assume they're probably pro SDF or something.
Yeah, I mean, most Kurds refer to northern Syria as Rojava. When we talk about the Democratic Autonomous Administration, no one, like most of the Kurds don't even know that's a thing, right? Democratic Autonomous Administration of Northern and Eastern Syria. No one knows that name. Everyone just refers to it as Rojava because it's the western part of Kurdistan.
Well, actually, most people just refer to it as wherever they live. If they're in Raqqa, they call it Raqqa. If they're in Deir ez-Zor, they call it Deir ez-Zor. But no, most people do identify as Syrians, Syrian people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same in Iran. You know, the Kurds, a lot of the Kurds there call themselves Iranian. You have Kurds in Iraq that call themselves Iraqi. You have Kurds in Turkey that call themselves Turkish.
Exactly. Because that's just the material reality, unfortunately, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, but it's like colonialism. It's not okay. It's not, you know, when there's a Palestinian that calls himself Israeli, Arab, do you think that's all right?
Oh, there is a lot of them that do, but no, they're like, it's not right, and they should call themselves Palestinian, and they have a right to. But it's not saying that they don't have an agenda just because they call themselves that. Like, they do. They have an agenda. They want to make the land Palestine.
So the Palestinians should call themselves Palestinian. So why shouldn't Kurds refer to their own land as Kurdistan?
Because nobody came in from Europe to occupy their land, bro.
No, the people that occupied us were already there. Turkey, Syria,
they're
Iraq.
already there, so they're not occupiers. They're literally indigenous to the land too. We all shared it forever. Even when it was called Kurdistan, in this map, there was probably Turks there, there's probably Arabs there, there's probably all kinds of people there.
I mean, the majority of the people there, even till today, are Kurds.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that there weren't any other kinds of people there.
I mean, we're not calling, for example, Raqqa, we're not calling it Kurdistan. We're not calling Damascus Kurdistan. But when it comes to the other side, you know, people call Kobane, they call it Syria, or people call our cities like Ahmed, Diyarbakir, they call it Turkey. Hakkari, they call it, we call it Jolamek, they call it Turkey. Bro, these cities, these are fully Kurdish. There's nothing Turkish or Syrian or Iraqi or, you know, Persian about us.
But at one point in time, they were called another thing, and they'll be called another thing 100 years from now. Like, words, language, and the names of places change. And you can call them whatever you want historically, but they're like, if more people start identifying with that thing, like, that's also a reality you have to deal with.
Yeah, but these names were pushed onto us. We never accepted these. It's just like the Palestinians in Israel that did not want to move out of their homes were forced to accept this Israeli Arab identity. right? They were occupied, and they started to live in Israel, and now they're Israeli Arabs. We didn't choose to be Turkish Kurds. We actually, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So this is just one map, right? This is from 100 years ago. This specific map is from 1893, during Abdul Hamid's era. There are way older maps of 1,000 years ago where you have Kurdistan, when Turkey, when Syria, when Iraq did not exist. The people that live in those lands refer to their own lands as Kurdistan. That's why when the Kurds in Syria, themselves, the Kurds in Syria, took up their weapons to fight against IS, referred to their own lands as Rojava. Even though there is no autonomous entity in Syria that labels itself Rojava, still the Kurds refer to it as Rojava. The Kurds in Iraq created an autonomous region called the KRG, right? The Kurdistan Regional Government. But they all refer to it as Kurdistan. They don't refer to it as a regional government, for example. The same thing applies to the Kurds in Rojava in Iran and the Kurds in Turkey.
I'm not saying that it. I think, okay, here's what I've been told by many Syrians. Okay, nobody called it Rojava before 2013. So I would like to find, like, maybe I haven't done enough research, but I'll look around for more possible, like, instances where people actually called it Rojava, because from my understanding, like, even the Syrian parties in Syria didn't call it Rojava. They called themselves the Syria Future Party. They called themselves PDKS. You know, they call themselves, Syria.
Yeah,
Even YPG is like the People's Defensive Forces. What does PYD mean?
Yeah,
like, none of them named anything Rojava in that time. Anytime before 2013.
Right, so I'll respond to this, and after that, Yusuf, I think you wanted to say something. These terminologies, like Bakur, like Rojava, Bashur, Rojavat, we used to refer to all of it as Kurdistan. Like when we Kurds, Kurds from Turkey, when we talk with each other, we don't refer to the Kurdish part in Turkey, we don't refer to it as Bakur. We just call it Kurdistan. The same thing when you talk with Kurds from Bashur, they won't call it Bashur, they'll just call it Kurdistan. The same thing applies to the Kurds in Syria. There is this one famous quote from Qazi Muhammad. He says, 2 + 2 = 1, referring to the 4 parts of Kurdistan. He's saying, like, Kurdistan cannot be divided into 4. We only call these places north, east, south, and west because we don't want to refer to our own lands as Turkey, for example, right? That's the only reason. Like, if you go back, no one used to call the Kurdish part of Syria Rojava. That's true.
Okay, so you can see why a lot of Syrians view this as like something foreign or something new that's like not very genuine, or something that they're a little skeptical of, because everyone's always called it Syria. Then suddenly this word Rojava comes out of nowhere, and a lot of people accuse Turkey of it. Like I know people like talk about like Turkish occupation of Syria, but like many people view the only interference that they view as Turkish is the PKK in Syria's Kurdish politics.
Can I comment now?
Yeah, go on, bro.
So what Jihad said is right about how these terms like Rojava, Bakur, etc. are more like relatively recent informal terms to describe like corners of Kurdistan. And in keeping that in mind, then yes, the Rojava name is fairly recent, though a bit older than 2013, but only like by a decade or two. But you're right about that. But that does not necessarily mean then that before the term Rojava was used, that the term Syria was used. Something we have to keep in mind is that the regions we're talking about are like, they're not like around Damascus. They're not the direct outskirts of Aleppo. They're like basically empty lands of just villages and in the past nomads that would just wander around. The people there, even in like Ottoman times, did not have much contact with the administration, like the empire. And later in time of the nation states, so like right now and the past 100 years, they also did not exactly interact much with Syria or like the French occupation, Even the cities, like the cities that we have there now, are either, few of them are like towns that just grew up into cities, but most of them are just either cities that were created by the French, or like people fled to these regions and they turned into cities.
So you don't see Turkish police in your area?
We do now, but in the past we didn't. And Turkey, if we're talking about Turkey, they were the quickest out of all our oppressor countries to establish like presence, like their own presence in these regions, in like Bakur, northern Kurdistan. In the case of Syria, that took much longer, and even in the case of like the 60s and 70s, it's the Syrian government themselves that made an effort to like intentionally leave out the local Kurds. For example, in the censuses, where hundreds of thousands of Kurds were left like without a Syrian identity, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that the Rojava name is new, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those regions were known as Syria, at least not by the locals, you know? And this also counts for non-Kurds, though of course they did not call it Kurdistan in most cases. But, you know, you get my point.
I get your point, and I have to disagree, because the locals do indeed just identify as Syrians for the majority, because although, a lot of them were left out of citizenship, many of them do get citizenship because they were originally there. The Assad regime spread this conspiracy that a lot of Kurds came from Turkey in order to not give them citizenship. But no, a lot of them are literally have been there for a long time, and they did get citizenship. And also on top of that, many Kurds went to Aleppo to get jobs. And so, you know, actually where the most Kurds are in Syria is in Aleppo. And you know that most of the Kurds in Aleppo don't even speak Kurdish, because most of them have been there for generations and they only speak Arabic. But they're not included as part of the SDF's agenda. Maybe only like a couple neighborhoods where it's still like Sheikh Mahsoud and Ashrafi. But most Kurds are Syrians. They identify as Syrians and they speak mostly Arabic, and they are Muslim, and most of them are Sunni too, and most of them are like conservative Sunni too. Like most of them are like very anti-nationalism and they identify as Syrian, but they don't really like want a republic. They kind of want an Islamic state.
I should clarify. My point wasn't that like the people today in those regions identify as something other than Syrian. My point was more so, you said earlier, like when Jihad showed this map, you said since this map was made, several generations of people have like grown up and died, you know, and like that has been a while since this region was known as Kurdistan. My point was to say like it's not the case that the Syrian name was used in these regions all that time until Rojava. It's true that most people in the region today call themselves Syrian, but that is also only like a few decades old, you know?
Okay, that's fine. I can agree with that. Like it took longer for them to adopt it than others maybe, and there's still probably like Kurdish villages where they like completely identify with Kurdistan, and I don't disagree with that, and they've held on to their culture and everything. But for the most part, especially in the village, like in the big cities like Kamishli and Kobani and Afrin, and like they do identify as Syrians.
Yeah, that's true.
Welcome, Chia, bro.
What's up, my brother? How are you?
How are you doing?
Very well, very well. And you?
I'm doing great, bro. What do you think of the conversation we're having?
I'm just here, bro. I'm not a David Copperfield that I can go back in time, you know? But what are you discussing?
Oh yeah, we were like talking about like terminologies. But you know, if you mind, you can just continue to listen, and maybe you can add some things to it. I do want to mention the live is being recorded. It will be uploaded to Hayan's YouTube channel. So if you don't want that, so I warned you.
Yeah, let me know. I can edit it out and stuff.
Oh, no, yeah.
I don't want to be in the YouTube.
No problem. Everything before this, I can just cut out everything after this.
Right, yeah, would you mind, to go down then? Like, I don't want to,
Sure. Have
right.
You can play up and I can edit it out, bro. Don't worry. I don't try to like snake people like that. One time I did it to an Assadist because he's a Assadist, but you guys are chill.
Sure.
Right.
Also, Hayan, can you send me the document?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, Yusuf, I'll just send it to you on Telegram.
Oh yeah.
Because I have it. Oh, hij is weg.
Hij komt wel zo terug.
Ik denk dat hij die... ja, maar ik heb hem ook al naar gestuurd.
Ja, exact. Wat is eigenlijk het punt van deze argument? Gewoon? Wat willen jullie, wat is nou het ding waar jullie niet mee eens zijn, waar het dan over gaat?
Oh no, we were just going over the list. Like I started with the first one, like what is Rojava? That's his first point in the document.
Yeah, I wrote it as if like someone is completely has no idea, so you can skip past the parts that already know.
Yeah, but you know, it's the really interesting points you bring up. For example, what is Apoism? They're not all Kurdish nationalists. I mean, wait. Yeah, so the definition of nationalism you use, I think you mean like patriotism.
Sure. I think like what I consider myself as a Syrian nationalist, not like to a crazy extent. I still believe like the Levant is the actual nation. But I think right now, like my approach is that we should unite as Syrians, try to strengthen this country that already existed for like at least a few years, and we can develop into something broader where, you know, we can connect with other regions like the Levant or like Kurdistan or etc.
Yeah. So the idea of nationalism or the nation state is that you create a country for one ethnicity, and Öcalan highly opposes this.
No,
we see this in northern Syria as well, right? So it's not
there's
strictly
ethno-nationalism is what you're describing for one ethnicity.
Yeah. So we're against that. And
yeah,
you know,
nationalism is bad for sure. And Turkey is an ethno state for some reason. It's crazy.
So a lot of people that call themselves Apoist, right? Apochi, most of the time Apochi, or Apoju, are a lot of the times Kurdish like patriots, or they believe in Öcalan's ideas like democratic confederalism.
And a lot of them like sometimes put the interests of Kurds above interests of other people. Would you say no?
Interest of Kurds or no?
So like, do you care more about the life of a Kurd in Iran than you do of a Turk in Istanbul?
Sorry, which organization or like what are we talking about? Who puts
Kurdish Nationalists?
Would you include like PKK supporters in that category?
I think they're kind of an extreme version of nationalism, but I think like nationalism can also just mean like you put your interests first, you know?
I'll answer this, Jihad. I think you'll like it. So,
all right.
Jihad is someone who is like very pro PKK, and I guess you could say oppoist. Personally, I'm not. So I'm saying this from like a more, I don't want to say objective, but like a more outside perspective. When it comes to oppoists, I don't think it's fair to call them like extreme nationalists or even necessarily nationalists.
They blow themselves up, dog.
What do you mean?
There are suicide PKK members, like suicide bombing PKK members.
I'll have
not extremists.
Respond to that later, but what I want to say is like these people, they're not like Kurdish, not like ethno-nationalists, but also not in general just nationalists. These people, as you can see in the case of Rojava, they want diversity, they want everyone to integrate, they want like a multi-ethnic society, you know? I think that you could make the argument that the Barzani-backed groups are nationalists and extreme nationalists at that, but
man, I don't associate a connotation with the word nationalist. I describe it how I see it. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I think they put the interests of Kurds above others, and I think like they're willing to go to pretty extreme lengths to prove that. The person in chat is asking, who do you support, Yusuf? Which group do you support?
I don't support any group right now. I used to be pro PKK, but I think that precisely the steps they've taken to show that they're not nationalists has led them to a path that is just not like productive in general, not for Kurds, not for anyone really.
So are they not extreme enough for you or too extreme?
I think that they're not extreme enough when it comes to fighting for what they want to achieve, but I think that they're the right amount of extreme when it comes to like relations between like ethnic groups. Like I don't think that we should do to non-Kurds what these states have done to us, right? I don't think Kurds are better or anything like that. And the PKK also does not think that, but I think that they're too peaceful when it comes to achieving their goals.
Damn.
For example, look at Rojava right now. they're, I think you would say that they're resisting against integration, but they're doing so by just through like paperwork and stuff like that, through like bureaucracy, you know?
Yeah, they're resisting by just pushing the date further and further. And
Yeah,
trying to delay it
I
as
don't
much
think
as
that's
possible.
productive. I think that if they want to not integrate, then they should actually do something about it.
Yeah,
Or
they're
they should
waiting
just
for
integrate,
Sharaf
you
to
know?
make a mistake big enough that the world might, suddenly want to support them again.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said at the start.
They're waiting. They're like, Shara will eventually trip on himself and make a mistake big enough that the world will want to support us again.
Personally, I think that what's happening is that the US and like the West and pretty much every country that's involved in Syria right now, is trying to pressure the Rojava administration to integrate. And
Yeah, but they could have just abandoned them like Taliban. So they're giving them the chance to make the decision.
I think
is
that the
weird.
reason, I think there's not like a real choice. I think that's like kind of like just diplomacy, you know. I think that the reason they're pushing so hard for Rojava to integrate is because the alternative option is that their new, like the Western-backed government is going to have to fight Rojava, who until now has been armed by both Russia and US, you know, to fight ISIS. And
Yeah, they're afraid of the prisons of ISIS to be set free.
that too, I guess. But you know, like I guess I'm just saying that I think the PKK is not really extremist when it comes to their beliefs. Maybe they're actually, if you want to say like they blow people up or something, I think Jihad can say more about that. But when it comes to their beliefs, they're not like really nationalist. You know, they don't want to establish a Kurdistan, not even like secretly or anything. I don't think that's really the case.
If I tell you that HTS is reformed and it's not like Al-Nusra, do you believe me?
I think that's complicated, and I think in the case of the PKK, it's complicated too, because in both organizations there are of course different factions that want different things. But if you look at the PKK, if you really like look at the history, you'll see that for the past year or two, they've been undergoing a process where they just become completely defanged of both armed resistance and also just ideologically, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's like people within PKK that are like you and they're not going to listen to Öcalan and they are going to stay armed and they're not going to stop resisting.
I
Yeah, but
actually thought so too, but in recent times they've practically also given up. I can give you a name, for example, Cemil Bayek. In the recent 12th Congress, where they were like talking about like disbanding and stuff, he went to the cameras and said, you know, I always, or at least like I frequently opposed Öcalan, but he was right, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or when you look at Rojava, when you look at PYD, I mean, when you look at Eldar Khalil or something, he also used to be very pro, you know, like armed resistance and like kind of nationalism, I guess. But you haven't heard much from him lately. I don't think.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's fair to say that the PKK is like extremist anymore. Right? That's all just behind them now, for better or for worse.
I mean, there's still an army, and they're still doing like security raids of ISIS suspects, and you know.
True, but that army is no longer really affiliated with the PKK. It's just like its own thing now, and it's now being pressured by everyone around them, including former
the same
allies.
about the Syrian government police and the Syrian government army.
I'm talking about like the Rojava army. I mean,
I'm saying, would you say the same about HTS and how they're now just the Syrian army and they're not affiliated with HTS anymore because it's dissolved?
I would say that, but I would also say that both the Rojava army and the HTS army are influenced by foreign forces.
Okay.
yeah, that's true.
I think like after Assad fell, there's been a historic opportunity for negotiations because Assad was never willing to negotiate, and
That's true.
like I think like it's right for the HTS to dissolve, which it has, and for PKK to call on SDF to stand down, which I think it has, but SDF is still delaying it.
Yeah, Hayan, I want to respond to the suicide bombing statement you made. But before I do that, before I forget what I wanted to say about bro, I already forgot. Holy shit, what the fuck? No.
Yeah, I actually gotta go. I work in an hour. I gotta shower and stuff.
Oh, you gotta go?
Yeah, sorry. We can continue this later.
Yeah, I could, tell you real quick about the suicide bombing, and
Okay.
I don't know if I can say that on TikTok actually.
Yeah, it's a little sensitive and stuff.
Yeah,
But don't,
exactly.
it doesn't have to be included in YouTube. Like,
Alright.
everything before, like, the guy said.
So the ones against civilians, the PKK has never claimed responsibility for them, right? Unlike IS that did those attacks in Europe, they always claimed responsibility. If the organization does not claim responsibility for it, then why would they do it, right? Other groups that claimed responsibility for those attacks on civilians are groups like TAK, Tehra Bazen Azadiya Kurdistan, and it might be the case that they probably originated from the PKK, but it's like a more radical group that disagreed with the tactics of the PKK. But if we talk about, suicide bombings against military installations, the PKK did do those, and that's, like, you have had those type of attacks all throughout history, kamikaze pilots in Japan, you have had many of those instances. Also in, like, the Syrian rebels, groups like IS did that as well.
IS is not a Syrian rebel group.
Yeah, but, it's just that the personal, within the PKK, they see it as a personal development. So if they won't allow you to do it, right? If you just go to the PKK and you want to fight, if you go to Kandil as let's say a 17 or 18-year-old teenager, and you say, oh, I want to blow up Turkish vehicles, I want to, go and fight in the mountains, they won't allow you.
In Syria, there have been some attacks, by the way. Like, they put cars in, like, they put car bombs and they just drive them into marketplaces.
Yeah, that's insane. But in Kandil, they give you, like, education when you're young. They teach you about Öcalan's ideas. They first tell you what you, like, fight for, right? They don't allow you to go to war. And even, like, they didn't do many attacks inside of Turkey for a very long time. Yeah, so it's not like a radical T group as a lot of Turks claim it to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't deny it is, but I wouldn't. But, like, you've said, it's necessary. Like, that's all that needs to be really said. Like, if you already know, I agree that if there's no political option, then violent resistance is necessary. But in my opinion, the political avenues have been open for a while, and yeah, they should take advantage of those. But I actually gotta go now. Nice talking to you.
All right, bro. Nice talking to you too.
Take care, guys.
You too.
Bye bye.
Ach, bro, hij is echt een goede gast.
Ik
Really
weet niet,
good
man.
guy.
Ik weet niet.
Hoezo dat?
Ik weet niet. Je kan merken dat hij een beetje aan een bepaalde kant leunt. En het is meer dan alleen Syrisch nationalisme.
Ja, ik weet het. Maar
Ik
ja,
denk dat hij wel hier probeert om in good faith te praten, maar ik weet niet, man.
Ja, ik zei ook al tegen hem van, ik had dat document even, ik had er overheen gekeken, ik had een beetje gelezen en zo. Hij probeert, het zijn gewoon argumenten. Het is waarschijnlijk wat hij gebruikt om met